Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Vadadhari Yasodhanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Sarasvatim Pratyagiyaya Tushnim Sarasvatim Pratyagiyaya Tushnim Tatrata Sushvava Suvidvanastim Vanam Yata Venujavani Samshrayam Samspardaya Dagdam Manus Atanusochan Sarasvatim Pratyagiyaya Tushnim. Vaishnavis. Okay. Tatra, there. Ata, thereafter. Sushrava, heard. Surit, kinsman. Vinastim, all dead. Vanam, forest. Yata, as much as. Benujabani, fire due to the bamboos. Samshrayam, friction with one another. Samspardaya, by violent passion. Dagdam, burnt. Ata, thus. Anusochan, thinking. Saraswatim, the river Saraswati. Pratyak, westward. Iyaya, went. Tushnim, silently. So, before I read the translation of the purport, I'd like to request one of my very favorite devotees, Ganganath Prabhu, if he possibly could, to move down here to the front so I could see him. Jai, thank you. See his beautiful smiling face. Hare Krishna. Translation. At the place of pilgrimage at Prabhas, it came to his knowledge that all his relatives had died due to violent passion, just as an entire forest burns due to fire produced by the friction of bamboos. After this, he proceeded west, where the river Saraswati flows. So, let's see, who's speaking here? Anybody know? Because you guys have been doing this. This is his, okay. Sukadeva Goswami speaking at this point, and he's speaking about Vidura, right? So let me read the translation again. At the place of pilgrimage at Prabhas, it came to his knowledge, Vidura's knowledge, that all his relatives had died due to violent passion, just as an entire forest burns due to fire produced by the friction of bamboos. After this, he proceeded west, where the river Saraswati flows. Purport. Both the Kauravas and the Yadavas were relatives of Vidura, and Vidura heard of their extinction due to fratricidal war. The comparison of the friction of forest bamboos to that of passionate human societies is appropriate. The whole world is compared to a forest. At any moment, there may be a flare-up in the forest due to friction. No one goes to the forest to set it on fire, but due only to friction between the bamboos, fire takes place and burns an entire forest. Similarly, in the greater forest of worldly transaction, the fire of war takes place because of the violent passion of the conditioned souls, illusioned by the external energy. Such a worldly fire can be extinguished only by the water of the mercy cloud of saints, just as a forest fire can be extinguished only by rains falling from a cloud. Hare Krishna. So Prabhu, you okay there? I didn't want to embarrass you or anything like that. Okay. I wasn't trying to correct you in any way. I just wanted to be able to see you. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the main point that Prabhupada's really trying to make, the most important point Prabhupada is trying to make, I believe in this purport, is that this fire of worldly life, such a worldly fire can be extinguished only by the water of the mercy cloud of the saints, metaphorically, he's speaking here. Just as a forest fire can be extinguished only by the rains falling from the clouds. So that's the main point, the most important point of the purport, I think. But in the process of, kind of making that point, he's using the example of how, in the forest there's bamboos, and there's a bit of a wind sometimes, and causes some friction between the bamboos, and they ignite due to the friction, and it'll burn the whole forest down. In the same way, due to the, as he put it here, the passion, the violent passion in human society, sometimes there's, something happens, and there's this violent, because the human beings have violent passion, there's something that sets off a big altercation, Now, and it's the impression you get upon hearing this is that it's something that happens automatically, just like the bamboos in the forest, just there's a wind, and automatically they catch fire. Okay, my point is that something can be automatic, but not random. See, so in other words, the fire that takes place in the forest due to the wind and the bamboos rubbing, it's kind of automatic, but it's not random. Just like the leaves falling from the trees in the fall, maybe that's where how that season got its name. A certain time of the year comes and all the leaves fall from the trees. It's automatic, but it's not random. There's a plan behind it. There's administration behind it. It's orchestrated, ultimately by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Idam hi Vishvam Bhagavan Evetaro, that the whole cosmic manifestation is, a manifestation of his energy. And the Parasya Shaktir, Vividhai Vishriyate, Gena Bala Kriya, how's it go? Parasya Shaktir, Vividhai Vishriyate, so Bhavati, Jnana Bala Kriya Cha. Yeah, thank you. So it's, his energies are interacting and they're making things happen ultimately. So he's ultimately responsible for that, for the leaves falling from the trees and the wind blowing and, causing the friction in the bamboos and then the big forest fire. Now you could say, well, Bhrgupati Prabhu, that's a bit of a stretch, for the law of karma. But, I never heard Prabhupada say exactly that, but I have heard Prabhupada at least several times quote I don't know where it comes from, but it's from the Bible or where it's from, but he would quote that not even a blade of grass moves contrary to the will of the Supreme Lord. It's in one purport early in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and elsewhere I heard him quote Mahatma Gandhi used to say that. So it seems to support that idea that nothing's happening by accident, nothing's random. Automatic, yeah, maybe, but not random. And particularly in the case of human society, it's definitely not random. Like, for instance, here it's mentioned about how due to the violent passion, the societies, get up and fight each other like that. So that's that seems to happen automatically, but once again, it's not random. And Prabhupada gave this very nice example, several occasions, about how what's really going on behind the scenes. He gave this example of in a school, there's a teacher, I was mentioning this yesterday, Devarata Prabhu. There's a teacher, and he has a whole classroom of students, and two of the students in particular are really misbehaving. So the teacher, he's a very smart guy, and he tells those two students to come up to the front of the class, and they stand up in front of the room there, and he says, okay, now you just hold his ear. And he tells, and now you hold his ear. He says, okay, now you pull on his ear. And he says, and one kid starts pulling on the other kid's ear, and automatically the kid who's getting his ear pulled starts punching and kicking, and then the guy who's pulling his ear starts punching and kicking. It's a whole big fight, and they're beating each other up, you see? So now if you were to ask those kids, well, why did you start fighting him? Why did you start punching him? And why did you start kicking him? He says, because he hurt me. And the other one was, and if you ask the other one, same thing, he'd hurt me. But they don't understand, they forget. They were set up. You see, they're each thinking like, he's the reason why I'm fighting, because he hurt me. And he's thinking, he's the reason I'm... Yes, they were set up. The teacher set them up, right? So it's the same thing in human society. It's a setup, It's a setup. Somebody should... anyway, yeah. Just like with modern day examples, you have Russia and Ukraine or Israel and Palestine. It's a setup. Really what's going on, there's the immediate cause and the remote cause. In philosophy, they have those expressions, So the immediate cause is Palestine attacked, the Hamas attacked Israel, and Israel retaliated, defending itself. And then, that's the immediate cause. But the remote cause is that those souls and those particular bodies, they had karma. They had to get this karma coming. And this is the instrument, the way in which Krishna's, dishing out that karma. Same thing in Ukraine. And so superficially it appears like, oh, this one is the good guy, or this one's the bad guy, or sometimes it's hard to understand who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. But what really is going on is just, they're all bad guys, and they're all just getting karmic reaction. And Krishna just uses different varieties of, ways to, dish it out, so to speak. Okay, so going a little bit more deeply into it, in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, there's a verse, Nahi kaschit shanamapi jatu tishtatiya karmakrit. Prakriti, right? Nahi kaschit shanamapi jatu tishtatiya karmakrit. Prakriti, somebody help me out? I know the last line is Sarva Prakriti Jayagunai. That all men are forced to act helplessly according to the impulses born of the 3 modes of material nature. No one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. So in the purport, Prabhupada says that unless one is engaged in the good acts of Krishna consciousness, one will be forced to act according to the dictates of the illusory energy. Right? So the idea being that people, souls have, at least when they come to the human form of life, have a certain amount of free will. And if they choose not to, engage in the good acts of Krishna consciousness, then they're forced to act according to the dictates of the illusory energy. And that's what's going on in human society. People are just acting according to the dictates of the illusory energy, and as a result, becoming more and more entangled in its complexities and receiving reactions. And the interesting thing about it, it's done in such a clever way. Just like the teacher, he was very clever. He didn't have to lift a finger to punish either of those kids. The kids punished each other, right? So in the same way, material energy is acting in such a way that the conditioned souls are punishing each other, and they don't even realize. They think they don't even realize what's going on. They think that we're fighting. This is what we want to do. But actually, it's not like that. Later on in the 3rd chapter, just a few verses on, is the verse Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara bamudha karta hamiti manyate. That the bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the 3 modes of material nature, he thinks himself the doer of activities which are in actuality carried out by the modes of material nature. So the conditioned souls are thinking, like the Palestinians and the Israelis, they're choosing to fight. They're being forced to fight. They're being forced to fight by the impulses born of the 3 modes of material nature. They didn't engage in the good works of Krishna consciousness, so they're being forced to act according to the dictates. They engage in occupations dictated by the illusory energy. That's all. Other than devotional service, all you have is people being forced to act according, to the dictates of the modes of the illusory energy. Engaged in occupations dictated by the illusory energy. That's all that's going on outside of devotional service. And a lot of times it's not a very pleasant experience. Some people, there's the heavenly planets too. That's also occupations dictated by the illusory energy. But then there's what's going on here on Earth. And for a lot of people, it's not a very pleasant experience. So let's point that out. And this is like this whole system that's going on here in the material world. Is I think it's in the 7th chapter. There's that verse: Tribir Gunamaya Bhavar Ab Sarvam. You got Mohitam Nabijanati Mamevya Paramam Bhavam. That Krishna says that deluded by the 3 modes of material nature, the whole world doesn't know me, who am above these modes and infallible. So the 3 modes have that. It's a diluting effect. The Prabhupada in the purport uses the phrase, the spell of the illusory energy. Due to when you come in contact, if you become captivated, what's that verse? Krishna Bahir Mukha Bhoga Vanchakare Japati Mayatash Japati Atadade. That the soul turns its face away from Krishna and becomes captured by Maya. See, so when we turn our face away, when the living entity, the soul, turns its face away from the devotional service, it becomes captured, but in the way it becomes captivated by a virtual reality. We're captivated by a virtual reality, see? And deluded in that way, and we forget our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'll give you an example of this. Is just I remember one of the hardest places I ever tried to distribute books was I went to the Moreno Valley Mall in California, and it was on a weekend, and I went into this inside the mall, and there was a shop that had, it was like a video arcade shop. Kids were playing, they sit behind a computer and they're playing some sort of computer games, on the computer. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. They're all sitting ducks. There are all these young people there, and they're sitting there at the computer, and I'll just, I felt like a fox entering into the chicken coop or something like that. But man, was I surprised. I tried to talk to those kids, and they were, I start talking to them, and they go, they would practically ignore me. I couldn't, why? Because they were captivated. They were captivated by the video game that they were playing. They were totally absorbed in it and captivated in it. It occurred to me later, the only way I could have got through to them, if somehow or another I could have entered into that video game and preached to them. But actually, that's what Krishna's doing. Krishna's entering into this virtual reality as the spiritual master, sometimes as incarnations, and he's preaching within the virtual reality, because he's not part of the virtual, he's real. The spiritual master's eternally liberated soul, and the Prabhupada, and Krishna's Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they're in the virtual reality. But that's kind of what's meant, and there's so many, like in that verse, Krishna says, I'm above these modes, and he's not affected by the modes. I forget the Latin, but there's some sort of, the king can do no wrong. See, the king's he makes the laws, but he's not under the law. So Krishna makes the law. He created the virtual reality, but he's not under the control. He's not under the influence of the virtual reality. And neither is his confidential representative when he comes into the virtual reality for the purpose of helping the people who are captivated by the virtual reality get out of the virtual reality and return to the actual reality. So, yeah. So Prabhupada says here in the purport that it's only, these worldly fire can be extinguished only by the water of the mercy of the cloud of the saints. So the idea being that the saints, the bona fide spiritual master, the genuine representatives of Krishna are extremely important, and because they have the ability to liberate the conditioned souls from this illusory energy. And I'll give you an example of, sometimes it's actually in the Bhagavatam, in different places, it said that it's more important to worship them than even to worship Krishna. And the reason is they have power of attorney. Krishna's given them power of attorney. And I'll give you an example from my own experience of, I think, how that works. About 5 years ago, I had to go to a court case, and it was actually a devotee who was the defendant. And actually, it was a devotee you all know. It was Parvat Muni. I'll mention his name, who's hopefully now back in the spiritual world. And actually, this place in Bhakti Vikash Maharaj had something to do with it. He came here 2 years ago for the Shravanam Kirtanam camp. And Maharaj saw him. I don't think they knew each other, but maybe he found out his name. And apparently, according to Parvat Muni, Maharaj approached him twice and said, Parvat Muni, you should go to India and, spend the rest of your life there. I can't remember the exact words. Huh? Mayapur, yeah. So, I guess Super Soul just inspired you to tell him that you could see that his health wasn't good and he was on his last legs. And Maharaj approached him, called him by his name, and said, you should go to Mayapur and finish your life there. So Parvat Muni told me afterwards that really hit him. He was kind of, he knew, he was kind of on his way out, but he, was kind of attached to being in Los Angeles. But when he got the determination, and he decided, I'm doing it, I'm going to do it. And he went. And by Krishna's arrangement, things went well. I remember when he got there, after a while, he got an interview with Jayapataka Maharaj. And Jayapataka Maharaj said to him, so you're Parvat Muni, you're an old Sankirtan devotee. Welcome to Mayapur. You could stay here for the rest of your life. And he gave him a room, and they took care of him, and he had the opportunity to leave the world, in Mayapur, being surrounded by devotees, and that was the best possible situation. But anyway, so he had this court case. He was the defendant, and he was actually innocent, but unfortunately, they weren't able to get certain paperwork to prove it, to the court that would prove his innocence. So Amarenja was defending him, and he did the best he could, but because they didn't have this, he didn't have any the paperwork to demonstrate that he, what he was saying was the case. So the judge, had to find him guilty. So how it worked, though, the judge turned to the prosecuting attorney, and he kind of asked him, so what do you want? And it's like, he's the judge. He's the one who has the authority to make the decision, who gets what. But he's asking the prosecuting attorney for his opinion. How should I, what do you want me to do here? You want him to be put in jail, or how long, or what? And I was thinking, wow, that seems strange. But when I thought about it, it made sense, because the prosecuting attorney, the judge has seen like dozens of cases in a day, right? And he's not very familiar with any of them, because he just, he gets them at that time, boom, and he has to. But the prosecuting attorney's been working on that case all along, for weeks or whatever. He's totally familiar with it, and he's a trusted employee or whatever. He's a trusted person, see, within that system. So the judge, thinking, well, he's been working on the case. I know he's our prosecuting attorney. He's working for the state. He's working for the government. So I'll give him the power of I'll follow his recommendation. That's how it works, you see. So the spiritual master, he's the confidential servant of Krishna, and Krishna follows his recommendation. I'll give you another example. It's a little embarrassing example, but it's a good example, so I'll give it. Before I became a devotee, I worked at different jobs, different like warehouses and factories and things like that. And I got fired a bunch of times. But how it worked was, it's not, when they were unhappy with me, it's not like I got to go to the boss of the whole thing and, talk to him. And no, the foreman just made a recommendation, and or he just went to the boss and said, hey, this guy's not working out. And so the boss goes, okay, well, then tell him to come and get his paycheck and go home, like that. So it's the foreman was the decision maker. And the boss or the owner, or the manager, he just followed the recommendation of his trusted employee, you see? So that's how my understanding of how it works. The saint or the spiritual master, like that, they are the confidential servant, they're the trusted person of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I think it's said that, I think probably in one purport in the Chaitanya Charitamrita says that the Krishna's mercy follows the devotee's mercy. So if the devotee decides to be merciful, then Krishna's mercy follows, like that. And so anyway, so we can understand from this how important the devotees are, the saints, or the bona fide spiritual masters, the confidential representatives of Krishna. And we should really appreciate them and offer all respect. But even beyond that, we should try to become one. It's the first step is to appreciate those who are already there, operating on that platform. Definitely, that's step one. But step two is, in our own lives, we should try to come to that position. That's what Prabhupada wanted. And I'm going to try to give a little evidence for that. Well, one thing was, first evidence was back, I can't remember, it was 73, 74. Devotees from Los Angeles, New York, they wrote a Vyasa Puja homage to Srila Prabhupada. And, thanking him. And they ended the Vyasa Puja homage saying, and we don't know how we could repay you, something to that effect. And generally, Prabhupada never wrote a response to a Vyasa Puja homage, but he did to this one. He wrote a letter back saying, actually, dear so-and-sos, I, got your Vyasa Puja homage and noted its contents, etc., And then he made a comment that the only way you could repay the spiritual master, the only way you could repay me is to preach very vigorously as I am doing, you see? So Prabhupada wanted his disciples to become, preachers like him, follow in his footsteps, not just, he's, the great personality that comes from the spiritual world and everybody. No, he wanted us to, become preachers, spiritual masters in our own right. Actually, on one lecture public, I remember hearing him say he wanted an army of gurus. An army of gurus. And here I've got something else here that's I could read. Oh, wait a second, wrong place. Here we go. So this is an excerpt from a lecture Prabhupada gave, and he makes this point, I'll lead into it. Prabhupada says, as soon as I titled it Krishna Approaching Body, because Prabhupada referred to like that in the lecture. It says, as soon as I am desiring something, immediately my body is formed. Immediately a particular type of body begins to form. And as soon as I am mature to change my next body, I get according to my desire. Therefore, we should always desire Krishna. Then from this life, the Krishna approaching body, or the spiritual body, will be formed. The more you become sincere servant of Krishna, the more your body becomes Krishnaized, electrified. Therefore, advanced Krishna conscious person is considered to have a spiritual body. It's coming, don't worry. The same example as I have given several times, just like the iron rod. You put it into the fire, it becomes warmer, warmer. The more it is connected with the fire, it becomes warm, warm, warm. At last, it becomes red hot, so that at that time, that iron is touched to any other thing, it burns. It does not act as iron, it acts as fire. And he says, here's the part. He says, similarly, by this Krishna consciousness, continuous chanting. Actually, that's interesting, continuous chanting. I've shared this with devotees over the last, I've had it on my phone for a couple of weeks, and to be honest with you, when I got to that point here, continuous chanting, I would skip over it. When I read it to somebody, I wouldn't say that, and I just kind of go, I just go right to, you'll make your body spiritualized by the Krishna. But over the last few days, I had the opportunity to be chanting a lot of rounds, because I was just driving a long distance or flying yesterday, and I really experienced, wow, this is potent. And now, so Prabhupada's saying here, by continuous chanting, and I kind of, after the last couple of days of doing the continuous chanting all day long, because I had nothing else I could really do, so I, appreciating, Prabhupada knew exactly what he was saying. Continuous chanting is important. We're supposed to be continuously chanting. So it goes on to say, by continuous chanting, you will make your body spiritualized. At that time, wherever you go, wherever you touch, he'll be spiritualized. Without being spiritualized, without being red hot, if you touch, it will not act. Now here it comes. It says, Prabhupada says, so every one of us, those who have come to this Krishna consciousness movement, are expected to preach in the future and to become a spiritual master. This is like one of many, many statements like that. I'll read it again. So every one of us, those who have come to this Krishna consciousness movement, are expected to preach in the future and to become a spiritual master. So of course there's a Diksha Guru, Shiksha Guru, Padakshina Guru. So, Prabhupada didn't say which one you're expected to be, but the idea is that Prabhupada wanted his followers to step up to the plate and, become preachers. That's I think the gist of the essence of that. He goes on to say, here it is. But first of all, you must spiritualize yourself, otherwise it is useless. Okay, so we have to be preparing ourselves for that. It's not like it's formality. It's you can't rubber stamp a spiritually advanced person. We have to qualify ourselves by training. So he says, Krishna Shakti Vinanahai, and he doesn't quote the rest of the verse. He says, just like without being red hot, you cannot burn any other thing. Similarly, without being fully spiritualized, you cannot make others spiritualized. Therefore, we have to follow the parampara. That will help us to spiritualize ourselves. And when you are spiritualized, he says, and you have to wait for that time, then wherever you will preach, the result will be there. So the point being that Prabhupada wanted his followers to become empowered preachers of Krishna consciousness so that they could make other people Krishna conscious. So, we have to appreciate and respect saintly persons, but, above and beyond that, we have to try to become that. That's Prabhupada. That's Krishna conscious movement is meant for that purpose, to actually transform us and enable us to become to that level where we can actually help other people become Krishna conscious. Sort of a little bit more about that. This is an excerpt from another lecture Prabhupada gave. He says, take any yoga practice or sacrifice, anything for spiritual improvement. He goes, you have to work for it. Not that your laziness or idleness will make you. And he says, these boys and girls, they have taken the Krishna consciousness, they're working for 24 hours, and still the business is not finished. They're engaged in so many ways. They are young men. They are doing. I am an old man. I am also engaged 24 hours. Just to inquire privately, you can inquire privately from my attendants how I am working. So he says, so laziness is not, advancement of spiritual life. And he gives you now the famous example here. Says, Krishna was Arjuna's friend. He could have said, "Oh, Arjuna, I am your friend. You don't have to fight. All right, you sleep. I shall do for you." Prabhupada laughs. He says, this is nonsense. You have to do yourself. Krishna can show you the way. The spiritual master can show you the way. But the things have to be done by you. If you are slack, if you're lazy, if you cannot do it, and then he digresses. He says, just like a teacher can give you hints, you do like this. But passing of the examination is not the teacher's business, it is your business. So Prabhupada goes, so laziness is no spiritual advancement. Very much active, very much active. To rise early in the morning, to chant, to read, to make preparation, to go for Sankirtan, typewriting, publishing, magazines, books. Immense duties. People may say, oh, they're working so hard. What is the spiritual advancement? Because he says, just sit down. Yeah, basically people sometimes misunderstand it's just regular work. But no, we're actually, we have to, train ourselves in this way. And we have to take the initiative. It's like Prabhupada, like Prabhupada was making the point there. The spiritual master doesn't say, doesn't zap you or doesn't, do everything. We have to, he gives how did Prabhupada put it? He can give you the indication. He gives you the hint. Do like this, do like that. But we have to do the work. So that's an important point. I think I've heard it said we have to think like everything depends on Krishna, but act as if everything depends on us. I think I've heard that stated, right? And here we have good examples, even in this community, very good examples of the devotees who've understood that. I think Bhakti Vikash Maharaj is a great example of that, and I think Mahasa is a great example of that. Very humble, submissive devotees, but they understood that, okay, I got to do this for my spiritual master, so they take initiative and, take on a lot of responsibility to, achieve a particular thing. And so, that's a good example. We have to follow in their footsteps. And last point is, we should do it sooner rather than later. Sooner rather than later. Prabhupada, I'll read you something very interesting. This is here we go. This is an excerpt from a lecture Prabhupada gave in Mayapur, 1975. And he was, traditionally in the Vedic culture, like older people, they give advice. They're meant to give advice to younger people. And so Prabhupada was here, the mood here is Prabhupada's giving advice to his younger disciples, the elderly, wise, spiritual master is giving advice to his younger disciples. He says, how he concludes the lecture, he says, so don't try to repeat your birth again and again in this Kali Yuga. It will not be very happy life. Better sacrifice everything in this life and be fully Krishna conscious and go back home, back to Godhead. Don't wait for the next life. This is, he says, don't be thinking, this life I shall finish my Krishna conscious business. We should be thinking, in this life I will finish my Krishna conscious business. He goes, where's the difficulty to finish Krishna conscious business? If Krishna is explaining himself what he is, then where is your difficulty? Krishna is explaining himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is sending his representative, Acharya, to teach you. Krishna is within you trying to teach you. And if you're actually serious, then where is the difficulty? Inside, outside, always, books, knowledge, he is prepared. So where is the difficulty to make yourself perfect in Krishna consciousness? There is no difficulty at all, provided you're serious. So you become fully Krishna conscious in this very life. You are all young men. You are not old man like me. I have no opportunity. And then that was the end of the lecture. So, there's the expression, make hay while the sun shines. What? He's stunned, yeah, right. Yeah, I wasn't there. Maybe you were there, but I remember listening to the lecture, and Prabhupada just stopped speaking. He could have said more, but he just couldn't speak anymore. But the point is, so Prabhupada was trying to tell his disciples that, don't stick around here, finish up your business, get out. That's called ego progresses. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And you're young. You still have healthy, young, energetic bodies. This morning I was, during the Tulsi Kirtan, I was watching the devotees as they were, I don't know if you could still call it circumambulating, I think it was orbiting the Tulsi plant. And I was watching this one devotee in particular, and I was looking at him, I was going, wow, I think that guy is defying the laws of gravity, This devotee right here. He was just going around so fast, and it looked so effort and so, graceful, and was so, I just said, this doesn't look right, I thought he was like displaying some mystic power or something like that. It wasn't just once. I just kept watching. Said, no, wait. That doesn't look right. Anyway, so when you have a young body, it's you have a lot of energy, and so take advantage of that. Because when you get older, it's different. Like this morning, I don't know. I was chanting my japa in here, and somebody may have noticed. I'm kind of changing positions a lot. And if somebody were to come over to me and ask me, Bhrgupati, Prabhu, what are you doing? How come you're moving around so much, and it's like you're stretching or whatever? And my reply would have been, I'm squeezing my tube of toothpaste. In other words, like when you have like a tube of toothpaste, when it's brand new, it's full of toothpaste. But as you use it, you get less and less toothpaste. And when you get down to the end of the tube, then you have to curl it up, right? And I know I do this. I curl it up, and you got to squeeze out every little last bit. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to squeeze out the little last bits of energy that are in the body. You see, but when you're young, you don't have to do that. When you're young, it's just you open the tube of toothpaste and just boop, and toothpaste comes squirting out. But as you get older, it's kind of you have to do different. You have to have a strategy how to get that toothpaste out of there. So make hay while the sun shines. While you have young, healthy bodies full of energy, enthusiasm, go for it. Try to be really serious about Krishna consciousness, and fulfill this desire, instruction of Srila Prabhupada, becoming empowered preachers of Krishna consciousness. It's definitely something that's preferable to do when you're young. Prabhupada actually, I don't remember the background to it, but I know there was one statement Prabhupada said, work now, samadhi later. He didn't recommend that devotees, while you're young, work, samadhi later. Like this morning, I went to the bathroom and I bumped into Abhidhuta Chandra, and I said, oh, Prabhu, I noticed, hey, notice how you been? And he was telling me he's going to get involved with farming project. They have an idea to have a garden here, and then eventually get some land and have some cows, and then have a bigger project, something like Krishna Valley, what they're doing in Hungary, And I was listening to him, and I was thinking, wow, I'm not thinking like that. I'm not saying it's, but because I'm thinking about, okay, I'm coming down the home stretch now. Maybe I got 10 years if I'm lucky, and I got to really start getting more serious about hearing and chanting and getting absorbed in Krishna consciousness, because I'm coming down the home stretch. I'm not thinking about starting some, big project like Krishna Valley or distributing, like, competing with Mahotsav or whatever. Not that I could anyway. I'm just thinking about, okay, I got to start, get serious about getting more Krishna conscious, so hopefully I could remember Krishna at the time of death. So, as you get, you think differently. So, but now is the time. You're at the age. You're in the situation. Now's the time to really think seriously about, becoming really absorbed and expanding the movement. This is the opportune situation, and my observation this morning was, this temple is as fired up as any kind of temple I can remember ever being part of, or visiting or seeing. The last time I can remember seeing so many young people so enthusiastically engaged in kirtan was, sometime like in 1976 when Prabhupada came for the Ratha Yatra, something like that. It's it's very good. Los Angeles, New York has been around for 60 years, since 1970. So what's that? It's over 50 years. But this is really dynamic here, what you have happening. So take full advantage of it, really plug in, be very serious in your sadhana and your service and everything, and try to become empowered preachers of Krishna consciousness and do something significant to spread the movement. So I think I'll stop there. Does anybody have any question or Haraj?
Someone was going to ask this, so I'll ask it. What was Parva Bruni convicted of, and what did the prosecutor say?
It was an embezzlement. Supposedly he's being accused of embezzling some money from a family member. Something to do with like his father's will, or anyway. But he actually had the paperwork to show that he didn't do it, but it was down in San Diego, and nobody ever went down and got it from the court to bring it up to the case. So, they found him guilty, and he had to go to jail for a while, but unfortunately. But he was pretty philosophical about it. I mean, he just chanted Hare Krishna, and he got out, and he just continued with his devotional service. Yeah. Well, I'd like to I don't know who's responsible for it, but I couldn't help but notice this morning all these beautiful paintings around the room. Whose ever idea it was, whoever executed it, wow, it's beautiful. Paramatma. Oh, Dharmatma. Oh, they just said Paramatma. Ultimately, Paramatma gets the credit for everything, but Dharmatma and Paramatma. Okay, well, yeah, it looks great. It looks great. And I walked up close, and I was... it was on canvas, so I was actually...
He donated them all, right? Dharmatma Prabhu donated them?
He donated the cost, he donated all the labor involved.
Oh, I see.
The cost of the materials.
They looked so authentic. I walked up close, and it was on canvas, and I really couldn't tell that they weren't genuine or actual oil paintings. But I thought, no, it can't be. It's like 20 of them, like all the same size, and no. But anyway, it's a fabulous job, and it looks great. It looks really beautiful. I mean, I wasn't here last year when I was here, so immediately I kind of, noticed that and was very impressed. Anybody else? Anything they'd like to say or ask? Okay, thank you. Yeah? Okay.
Prabhu, you were making the point about being humble, continuing with one's service, and then at the same time you also said that we should remember that Krishna is ultimately in control of everything, but still as devotees who are serving, we should feel like we want to do something for Krishna, and in this regard, I was reading from Transcendental Diary. This is Hari Shauri Prabhu recollecting Srila Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasasana in Los Angeles. He says, Prabhupada has an elegant way of sitting upright, not slouched, his head tipped slightly up, moving from side to side in time with the rhythm. His alert eyes and mien of concentration and sobriety gave him a distinct regal aspect. Yet in his face there is a subtle blend of soft approachability which invites us one and all. He is our supreme commander and at the same time one of the troops. So what I find amazing is how Srila Prabhupada maintained his position as an acharya and conveyed that, while at the same time perfectly exhibiting the mood of being a humble, devotee who's approachable and affectionate to all his disciples and followers. And when I read that personally, at least my personal characteristic, it's just a hypocrite. You either are some control freak, or there's the other end of the spectrum where you're artificially humble. And how do you at least get a drop of some glimpse of that character in us, where we can be genuinely humble and at the same time be responsible with our service and do the needful?
Well, off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but Prabhupada certainly had it. I mean, you're right. He definitely exemplified that, showed that. He was the acharya. You know, he taught by example. He took the responsibility for, you know, the Krishna consciousness movement, and at the same time, he was showing the example of being like, you know, one of the workers, a humble devotee. So he definitely did that. Just the obvious things, you know, just good chanting, purification of consciousness. You know, it comes as a result of advancing in Krishna consciousness. Krishna will give us the intelligence to be able to understand that that's how, you know, that's the way we should be. So that, off the top of my head, that's all I can think of. Just be really focused, concentrated on the basic things, purifying our consciousness, and, you know, and from within, Krishna will give us that intelligence, how to be simultaneously responsible, but at the same time, like a humble worker like that.
And my personal hope, and if you can prove that, is also mercy of devotees like yourself. That you reflect those kind of qualities in Srila Prabhupada, and it's just amazing. To me, it just feels like so far away and so unreachable, but by your mercy.
Well, by the encouragement of nice devotees like yourself, Bhakti Cosmos, I'm continuing. That's about all I could say for myself. Somehow or another, I'm continuing, but anyway. Yeah.
You call?
This is somebody calling in. Oh, wow.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Go ahead, Prabhu.
Okay. Bhrgupati Prabhu, Dhanavad Pranam. Thank you for firing us up. So, Prabhu, I wanted to ask you, so, you know, he was making this point, think like everything depends on Krishna and act like everything depends on us. You know, I was wondering if you could elaborate more on that point, you know, explain it further.
Well, okay. Once again, off the top of my head, I mean, when I'm, you know, going out on Sankirtan, I mean, you can't be in the mood of helplessness. You have to be in the mood of, I gotta make this happen, right? You know, I gotta make sure my car is operating. I've got my inventory. I've got my place picked out. I've got my, you know, wardrobe. I've got a place. You know, there's so many different details you have to put effort into arranging. But when I'm out there, when I'm actually, you know, out there on Sankirtan and I'm engaging in the activity, I feel completely helpless. You know, I realize, wow, you know, I've done all these different things, and I'll even, you know, being enthusiastically approaching the people, and I've got my different lines and techniques and, you know, how to get people to, you know, but simultaneously I understand it's totally up to Krishna, you know, I'm helpless, so I'm just praying, you know, so I'm kind of, I have a picture of the 6 Goswamis, I have it on my table, and I try to, you know, be praying to Prabhupada and the 6 Goswamis to, you know, to please and empower me, engage me, allow me to be an instrument in engaging these conditioned souls in devotional service. So I'm trying like anything, but at the same time, simultaneously I'm feeling, I can't do this. I mean, you know, only by Krishna's mercy are these people. Prabhupada prayed like that in that arrival prayer. My dear Lord Krishna, I don't know why you brought me here. Now you could do what you like with me. These people are so much under the modes of material nature. I don't know how I'm going to be able to, you know, help get them to be interested in this message. But I know by your causeless mercy, anything is possible. You're the most expert mystic. Like that, Prabhupada was, you know, he was trying everything, but he simultaneously was feeling that I can't do this. You know, it's only by your mercy that these people will be inspired and kind of be attracted to do this. So, yeah, we have to work really hard, but at the same time be aware, be fully conscious that ultimately it's only by Krishna's mercy that somebody will become interested or attracted or receptive to the message. And so therefore we have to pray for that, you know. And Prabhupada did. I gave this example last year, I think, but I can't remember for sure. But I was listening to a lecture Papa was giving in 1966 in the Bowery in New York. So he started off the whole thing, and he was chanting, and I can't remember, like he was chanting, maybe he started with Bande Ham or Namaom, I can't remember. But, you know, pretty quickly into the chanting, he started singing that song, Shri Shri Sad Goswami Astika, okay? And he was chanting, and he chanted it for about 10 minutes, plus or minus, maybe 10, 11 minutes. And sometimes he was repeating the verses, and then he went on to chant Shri Panchatattva Mancha and Hare Krishna, and then he did the class. And then, so I was thinking about it, wait a second, why was Prabhupada doing that? Because he didn't explain the song. You know, sometimes in Los Angeles, Prabhupada would sing a bhajan, and then he would explain it to the devotees. Or if they knew it, like with Jai Radha Madhava, Prabhupada would chant, and devotees would respond. But on this occasion, Prabhupada, there was no devotees responding, of course. They didn't, you know, these people wouldn't have a clue and there was no explanation. So I was asking myself, well, what was Prabhupada doing? Why was he doing that? You know, and then the only answer I could come up with was Prabhupada was praying to the 6 Goswamis. You know, that was part of his bhajan. You know, he was there. He was preaching, but Prabhupada was praying for the mercy of the predecessor acharyas, and I believe that's an example of that. You know, he was singing that song. He didn't explain it. Devotees weren't. It was him personally. He was personally taking shelter, praying, you know, to the predecessor acharyas and the 6 Goswamis for the mercy to be able to to spread the Krishna, be successful in spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. So Prabhupada is once again the best example. He endeavored like anything, but simultaneously he really took shelter and prayed for the mercy of his spiritual master and the predecessor acharyas. I hope does that shed some light on the point? What does Mahatma say? Is he happy with that answer at all?
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, so in this regard, can I follow up the question?
Yeah.
Okay. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So Prabhu, in this regard, when we're out on books and when we're praying to the spiritual master to be used by his to be used as his instrument, that time could we understand that he's giving us the divya gyan, divine knowledge, showing us the way how to do it like that? Is that the proper understanding?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Krishna reveals to you. Sometimes you find things coming out of your mouth, you don't know where did I get that from, you know? It's if we're really surrendering, then Krishna, as the super soul, he gives you the intelligence, how to do it, just what to say, what not to say, where, just exactly what to do. Even your bodily movements, your speech, everything. You come to the degree that you're actually surrendering and, being, how would you say, connected with that internal potency, you become like a puppet of Krishna, and you could feel it. You can, feel how like Krishna's kind of directing you to, move in a certain way, talk in a certain way, say certain things, and you don't even know how did I figure that out? But it's Krishna inspiring the devotee who's surrendering a lot, to be able to successfully do the service. So yeah, I think it is that's the case. Anything else, Mahatsa?
Anything else, Prabhu?
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay, well, thank you all for being a patient audience. Thank you. Grantaraj. Oh, we have one last person. Mukunda Dat. Thank you. Yeah.
I don't really have a question. I just a comment, but actually it's a
Anything from you is welcome.
appreciation.
Chastisement, anything, whatever.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for a typical Bhrgupati Prabhu class. I say typical because the way that you just have a gift that you're able to speak in such a way as to make it clear to the audience that although you address very basic points of our philosophy, and as often as not, the atheistic tendencies that we often don't realize are within us, but you do this in such a way as to make it very clear that the very basic points of the philosophy are actually much deeper than we think they are. And that's because you have genuine realization as a result of performing Sankirtan Yajna so diligently. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I feel like my life is a success after hearing, getting the stamp of approval from Mukundana. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.